All right, so you know that incredible feeling, right? When you see a rainbow, it's like pure magic.
It really is.
But have you ever actually stopped to think about, like, WHY we see those 7 distinct colors,
Hmm.
always in the same order?
Yeah, that's a question that I think a lot of people just sort of take for granted. They see the beauty of the rainbow,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't necessarily think about the underlying science.
Totally. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack in this deep dive.
All right, let's get into it.
So we're looking at a podcast episode today called Why We See 7 Colors in the Rainbow from a show called Science and Snacks.
Itchy title.
And one of the things that really grabbed my attention right off the bat was how it explained that raindrops essentially act like tiny prisms.
Oh, yeah. That's how it all starts, right?
So they split sunlight into its spectrum of colors, like a natural light show.
It's like well, you know how a prism works. You shine a light through it and it separates out all the different colors.
Right.
That's essentially what's happening with every single raindrop.
Makes sense. But here's where things get even more interesting for me. The episode talks about how Sir Isaac Newton, back in the 1660s,
Yeah.
he was experimenting with prisms, and he basically chose to identify 7 colors in the spectrum.
What? Yeah. He didn't just, discover them, right? Like, he made a choice.
Exactly. And the episode points out that his decision wasn't entirely based on, pure scientific observation.
Right. He was coming at it from multiple angles.
So Newton was really into music theory, and he actually saw this connection between the 7 notes of the musical scale and the colors he was seeing in the light spectrum.
So he was looking for harmony, not just visual harmony, but a deeper connection between light and sound.
Whoa, that's pretty poetic for a scientist.
Right. I mean, it makes you wonder, what if he hadn't had that musical background? Would we still see 7 colors in the rainbow?
It's kind of mind-blowing to think that our understanding of light and color could have been totally different.
Totally. And it makes you think about how much of what we perceive as, objective reality is actually shaped by our own cultural and historical context.
It's true. And you know what else? The episode even mentions that, some scientists today, they actually question whether indigo deserves its own distinct band in the rainbow.
Oh, yeah, the great indigo debate. It's is it a true color or just a shade of blue blurring into violet? Where do you draw the line?
Where do you draw the line? It's a good question.
And it gets to the heart of how we see color in the first place.
Okay, so how do we see color?
Well, our eyes have these special cells called cones, and they're sensitive to different wavelengths of light.
So different colors.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
we have 3 main types of cones.
Okay.
Ones that are most sensitive to red light, one's for green light, and one's for blue light.
So it's kind of like our eyes have these built-in filters that are just picking up those 3 primary colors.
You got it. And then our brain takes the signals from those 3 types of cones and mixes them together, just like mixing paint.
Ah, that's so cool. So that's how we end up perceiving millions of different colors.
Precisely. It's all about the combinations.
But, okay, so if our eyes can actually detect this whole continuous spectrum of light, why do we see rainbows as these distinct bands of color?
Like someone just went up there and drew lines in the sky.
Right. It seems like a bit of a disconnect.
Well, you see, it's not that our eyes aren't capable of detecting all those subtle gradations.
It's our brain.
It's our brain. Our brains are wired to simplify information.
To categorize.
Yeah, it's been more efficient that way. So we tend to group those rainbow colors into these neat little bands, even though the transitions between them are actually super subtle.
So it's like our brain is saying, 7 colors, got it, no need to make things more complicated.
Pretty much, which, might be fine for everyday life. But what about in fields like art or design? Could we be limiting our creative potential by just sticking to this simplified color system?
That's such an interesting question, and it makes me wonder about how other animals perceive color. The Science and Snacks episode mentioned that bees, for example, can see ultraviolet light.
Oh, yeah. Totally different visual experience.
Which is completely invisible to us. So their perception of a rainbow would be totally different from ours, right?
Absolutely. They would see additional colors beyond the violet end of the spectrum.
Like a whole secret rainbow that we're just blind to? That's insane.
It really highlights how much our perception of reality is limited by our own senses.
Yeah. And there are other examples too, right? Like the mantis shrimp.
Oh, the mantis shrimp. Now, those guys have some serious color vision superpower.
Tell me about it. The episode said they have 12 different types of color-sensitive cones.
12. Can you even imagine?
It's like our measly 3 cones are nothing compared to that. Their world must be an absolute explosion of color.
It's mind-boggling to think about. It's like their reality is on a whole other level.
I'm starting to realize that our human perception of a rainbow is just one very limited interpretation of what's really going on.
Yeah, we're just scratching the surface.
It's a little humbling, isn't it, to think about all the things we might be missing out on.
Definitely. But it's also exciting because it means there's so much more to discover.
So speaking of expanding our perception,
Yeah.
the episode also talked about human tetrachromats.
Oh, yeah. The people who can see colors that are invisible to the rest of us.
It's crazy. It's like they have a superpower.
It really is.
Yeah.
They have a fourth type of cone in their eyes, so they can distinguish between shades of color that look identical to you and me.
So for them, rainbows must be even more vibrant and complex than we can even imagine.
Absolutely. They're seeing a whole dimension of color that we're just not equipped to experience.
It's like there's this whole secret world of color out there that only a few people have access to.
And it makes you wonder, what if everyone had this enhanced color vision? How would it change our understanding of art, design, the natural world, everything?
That's a fascinating question. Like, would our whole world just suddenly seem more beautiful and more complex?
And it makes you question, like, what are the limitations of our current way of seeing things? Are we missing out on something truly amazing?
This is all so mind-blowing. I'm already looking at rainbows in a completely different light.
Me too. It's not just about the pretty colors anymore. It's about the physics, the biology, the perception, even a bit of human history.
It's like a whole tapestry of knowledge woven together.
Exactly. And it reminds us that even something as familiar and seemingly simple as a rainbow can hold hidden depths and spark profound questions about the nature of reality itself.
It seems like we've barely scratched the surface of this topic.
Oh, we've only just begun. We've talked about how humans and some animals see rainbows, but what about other cultures?
Right. Do they see the same 7 colors, or do their traditions and languages shape their perception differently?
That's exactly what we'll pick up in part 2 of this deep dive.
That's a great question. So are you saying that in some cultures, people might not actually see a rainbow the same way we do?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's not a universal thing,
Yeah.
this 7-color rainbow.
Wow, really?
Yeah, for instance, like some cultures only identify 5 or 6 colors in the rainbow,
Wow.
while others might have like totally different names and classifications for the colors they see.
So even though the physical phenomenon, the light refracting through those water droplets, that's the same everywhere, right?
Right.
But the way our brains actually interpret and categorize those colors, that can differ based on our background.
Absolutely. It all comes down to cultural perception.
It's like we're all looking at the same rainbow, but we're wearing different glasses.
Love that analogy. It really highlights how, culture can shape even our most basic sensory experiences.
It makes you realize how much we take for granted in our own perception, like we just assume everyone sees the world the same way we do.
It's natural to assume that.
Yeah.
But as we're seeing, the reality is way more nuanced.
Way more interesting.
Totally. There's a whole spectrum of ways to experience the world, and understanding those differences can actually make our own understanding so much richer.
Absolutely. So speaking of enriching our understanding, I'm curious to learn more about the actual science behind tetrachromacy.
Okay, yeah.
So how does having a 4th type of cone actually work on a biological level?
Well, I mean, the specifics can get pretty complex.
Sure.
But essentially, those extra cones allowed tetrachromats to distinguish between super subtle shades of color that just appear identical to the rest of us.
So it's like they have this higher resolution when it comes to color perception.
Exactly. They can see all the nuances that our eyes just can't pick up.
That's wild. And does that give them any practical advantages?
Well, there's some research that suggests tetrachromats might be better at discriminating between camouflaged objects.
Oh, interesting.
Or spotting subtle variations in nature.
Makes sense. It's almost like a superpower.
Yeah, like a visual superpower. And it makes you wonder if maybe this ability could have actually played a role in human evolution.
Maybe our ancestors who had this trait were better at finding food or avoiding predators.
It's a possibility. Some scientists think that tetrachromacy might have been more common in hunter-gatherer societies.
That's fascinating.
Because it would have given them a survival advantage.
It's amazing to think that this tiny difference in our visual system could have had such a huge impact on our history.
It really shows how evolution is this constant process of adaptation.
Always refining, getting better.
Yeah. And even our senses are being shaped by the pressures of the environment.
So in a way, our perception of the world is a product of both our biology and our cultural history.
Bingo. It's this Fascinating interplay of nature and nurture.
I'm telling you, this is making me question everything I thought I knew about perception.
It's like a whole hidden dimension to the world that we're only just starting to glimpse.
And who knows how much more is out there.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole topic so compelling. The more we learn about how we perceive the world, the more we realize how much we still don't know.
It's humbling, but also really exciting.
Oh, totally. It's like we're standing on the edge of this vast, unknown territory, just waiting to be explored.
And who knows what we might find.
I mean, maybe someday we'll even develop technology that allows us to experience the world through the senses of other creatures.
Like being able to see the world through the eyes of a bee or a mantis shrimp.
Exactly. It would be like stepping into an entirely different reality.
And that could totally revolutionize our understanding of nature.
For sure. It could even challenge our very definition of what it means to be human.
You know what I'm starting to think? I'm starting to think that the real beauty of a rainbow lies not just in the colors themselves, but in the endless possibilities it represents for understanding the world.
Absolutely. And ourselves too, right?
Yeah.
Like, it makes us question our own limitations, our own assumptions.
It's a good reminder that even the most, familiar and seemingly simple things can hold so much meaning.
So much beauty.
When we really take the time to appreciate them.
I love that perspective. It's like a call to action, to slow down, pay attention, and just marvel at the wonders that surround us.
It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and forget to appreciate the magic that's right in front of us.
Totally. But it's always there, waiting to be discovered.
Well, speaking of discoveries, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this final question that the Science and Snacks episode posed.
Okay, hit me with it.
If we've been talking about how we see rainbows, what does a rainbow see itself as?
Whoa, that's a deep one. It really makes you think outside the box.
Right.
I mean, obviously, a rainbow doesn't have, consciousness or perception in the way that we do.
Yeah, just a physical phenomenon.
Exactly. But if we were to kind of indulge in a bit of imaginative speculation.
Okay, I like where this is going.
We could say that a rainbow sees itself as this, bridge between light and matter.
I like
this symphony of colors created by the interplay of sunlight and water droplets.
It's like a fleeting moment of beauty and harmony born from the interaction of these different elements.
Precisely. And maybe that's the most important lesson we can take away from this whole exploration of rainbows.
What's that?
That even the most ephemeral, seemingly insignificant things can hold profound meaning and beauty when we take the time to truly appreciate them.
I love that. It's a reminder to, not take anything for granted.
To find the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, and I'm feeling incredibly grateful for this newfound understanding of rainbows and perception.
Me too. It's been a really enriching conversation.
And I hope our listeners are feeling equally inspired to see the world with, fresh eyes and a renewed sense of curiosity.
That's the goal, to spark that sense of wonder and encourage people to keep exploring and asking questions.
Because there's always more to learn, right?
Absolutely. The journey of discovery never ends.
And that's what makes life so endlessly fascinating.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It really is. And it's crazy to think that, this whole conversation started with just a simple question about rainbows.
It's amazing how one question can lead you down so many different paths.
It really is. And you know what I keep thinking about?
What's that?
Newton and his whole musical interpretation of the color spectrum.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if there are other ways, in other areas of science or even just in life, where we might be imposing our own frameworks on things without even realizing it.
That is such a good point. We tend to see the world through the lens of our own pre-existing knowledge.
And our biases.
Yeah, totally. And that can sometimes prevent us from, truly grasping the complexity of what's really out there.
It's like we're trying to force everything to fit into our neat little boxes.
Exactly. But the universe doesn't really work that way, does it?
Not really, no. It's way more messy and unpredictable than that.
And that's what makes it so fascinating.
I think this whole deep dive has been a really good reminder to be more open-minded.
Definitely. To be willing to question our assumptions and embrace new perspectives.
Even if those perspectives challenge what we thought we knew.
Exactly. Because sometimes being wrong can be the best way to learn something new.
It's true. And I definitely feel like I've learned a lot from this conversation.
Me too. It's been a really thought-provoking journey.
It's like I always thought of rainbows as being this, straightforward, beautiful thing.
Yeah, like a symbol of hope and promise.
But now I see them as this incredibly complex phenomenon that's woven together from science, history, culture, even philosophy.
And personal experience, too.
Totally. It's a reminder that there's always more to discover, even in the things we think we already understand.
And that the journey of discovery is never truly over.
Well said. So, to everyone listening, the next time you see a rainbow, don't just admire its beauty.
Take a moment to really appreciate it.
Think about the intricate forces that created it and the multitude of ways it can be perceived and interpreted.
And remember that the rainbow itself is just a small part of a much grander spectrum.
Of light and color and possibilities.
Most of which remains invisible to us.
But that doesn't mean it's not there.
Exactly. There's always more to see, more to learn, and more to wonder about.
So keep those minds curious and those eyes open to the wonders that surround us.
Until next time.
Thanks for joining us.